topics and opinions expressed in the following show are solely those of the hosts and their guests and not those of W4CY Radio, its employees, or affiliates. We make no recommendations or endorsements for radio show programs, services, or products mentioned on air or on our web. No liability, explicit or implied, shall be extended to W4CY Radio, its employees, or affiliates. Any questions or comments should be directed to those show hosts. Thank you for choosing W4CY Radio.
What's working on purpose anyway? Each week, we ponder the answer to this question. People ache for meaning and purpose at work, to contribute their talents passionately and know their lives really matter. They crave being part of an organization that inspires them and helps them grow into realizing their highest potential. Business can be such a force for good in the world, elevating humanity. In our program, we provide guidance and inspiration to help usher in this world we all want, working on purpose. Now, here's your host, Dr. Elise Cortez.
Welcome back to the Working on Purpose program, which has been brought to you with passion and pride since February of 2015. Thanks for tuning in this week. Great to have you. I'm your host, Dr. Elise Cortez. Most leaders are sitting on untapped human energy. I help them unlock it. I'm an organizational psychologist, workforce advisor, Vistage chair, and the founder of the Gusto Now movement. But the title I live by is much simpler. I traffic in energy, not the surface level motivation or another engagement initiative, the deeper force, what I call gusto, the life force for performance that drives commitment, perseverance, and genuine ownership of a shared mission in the clients we serve. You can learn more about us and how we can work together at gusto-now.com or visit my personal site, elisecortez.com, for information on my speaking and books. Getting into today's program, we have with us today Susan MacKenty Brady. She is a leadership educator, executive coach, and CEO of the Simmons University Institute for Inclusive Leadership. A Wall Street Journal bestselling author, Susan's work focuses on the human side of leadership, emphasizing self-awareness, connection, and the relational skills that drive performance. Known for her real practical guidance, she helps leaders navigate difference, strengthen trust, and lead from their best selves. She's the author of several books, the latest of which is All the Difference, 6 Leadership Actions to Bridge Perspectives, Strengthen Teams, and Create Value, which we'll be talking about today. She joins us today from Boston. Susan, a hearty welcome to Working on Purpose.
Thank you, thank you, thank you. It's such an honor to be on your show.
Well, let me say thank you for bringing this into the world, this beautiful book that you co-authored here. I'm one of those people that like the physical book. I want to hold it, touch it, hug it, highlight it, which I do. So as I told you before we got on air, there's nothing in the book that I don't align with and can't endorse and support. So thank you, Susan, for bringing it together so beautifully.
Well, I share that with my co-authors, which is a whole story about how this book came to be. But
yes,
thanks for having me.
Well, let's do this since you brought that up. Let's first start, just so listeners and viewers who don't know you yet, the way that I have some glimpse into you. Let's just hear a bit about your life's work and what it is that you've been doing with yourself and why it's so important to you.
Well, thank you for asking that. You know, I think we share some life work. I think in common at the core. My work has been about helping people, oftentimes leaders, and I find the people I work with at work, and my life's work is about helping us all return to a place of respect and compassion and understanding for ourselves, to get gentle with it. So my first 2 books were about navigating how do I coach my inner critic, and my inner critic just isn't critical of me; it's actually also critical of the people around me. And that's a losing strategy if we want to work together effectively. And then what does it mean to thrive? And how can we find what really lights us up in the world and give of our gifts in a colossal sea of difference and frankly, complexity at work? So how do I bring my best self to work? How do I return to my best self when I get triggered in a myriad of ways? How do I not shrink back and play small? How do I not be big and power over? So how do I show up as a grounded, effective leader that knows my own value and really appreciates the value of others? I would say that in totality has been my life's work. And I've had the privilege of coaching many different types of executives, working with many different types of executive teams around the world, and doing a lot of speaking about my various books along the way.
Well, I align with so much of that. And then I want to also showcase what you also say. You say that increasingly you are exploring the question that feels especially relevant in an AI-enabled world. What capabilities remain uniquely human and how can leaders develop them? I'm certainly fascinated with that as well.
Well, look, I mean, AI is the colleague we never asked for. There was no job description. We didn't even know she was coming. And now it is a colleague in our daily life. And so this is yet another complex challenge for us at work because our relationship with AI, person to person, is going to be cast in all sorts of differences, right? So if I'm fearful, if I feel like I'm cheating, if I feel like I can't wait to learn more, if I, am not clear about how my company wants AI. I mean, it is wrought with complexity. And so what we need to do is be better humans. And I think, with the human to human relationship, our skills need to be top notch in order to navigate what AI brings. And it already did. And I know you know this, Dr. Cortez, because just the entrance of women at work continues to be so disruptive. And now we have 5 generations, right, by 2030, with a myriad of differences in logic paths, in how we communicate, in how we want to be rewarded and recognized, and how we engage, and how we feel, and how we express. I mean, you name it. And so I think we have to learn. I do feel like the world craves just a playbook. I talk to a lot of leaders who are like, how do I do this? Because there's a lot of tension. There's a lot of avoidance of that tension. There's a lot of behavior that's either covert or overtly not great among people. And our job as team leaders and leaders is to get people to work together effectively. So how do I do that? So that's what this book is about.
Well, I want to echo what you were saying. I've never heard anybody say that AI is the call we never expected to turn up. I think that's brilliant and really, really situates it like, ta-da, I'm here, guess what? Yeah. And I want to echo that too, Susan, because one of the things that we did at Gusto Now, we're all about developing inspirational leaders and helping organizations to activate their purpose through their culture. And as we were going along too, we saw the need that we really do need to double down on humanity in the age of AI. So we started the Gusto Now movement, which is just that. How do we help develop humans to become their best human self, which means we are going to work on some of the things that you've been talking about in your book and your work. And I like what you said, in order for us to, to be relevant, we got to bring our best game. And so there's a lot of work to do there for us to be able to really develop and realize more of our potential as humans.
There's a lot to do. And by the way, here's the thing. As far as I'm concerned, we're all fellow travelers. I mean, I've been speaking and writing about this for 15 years in some way, shape, or form, and consulting and being a leader myself. By the way, being a leadership expert in writing books is a ton easier than actually leading because it's complicated. But the reason why I think we're all fellow travelers is we're not going to get it right every time, because to be human is a subjective game. It means even though I think I know how I landed for you when I said what I said, I'm really not sure. And so it's incumbent upon us to check in with ourselves and check in with the people around us. And that takes a heightened level of interpersonal skill, which starts, of course, with relationship with self. And I think, look, it used to be like fringy, like, oh, right, you have to have a relationship with yourself and look within and reflect and self-actualize. And actually, yeah, I think your job stability and growth depends on that, how aware you are of yourself and how able you are to quickly kind of call your own self out so that you can return to a place where you're productive with other people again. It is hard. It is hard. And if you forget to eat, or you don't sleep well the night before, or you're just blue because it's raining out, whatever it is, right? It's going to be even harder.
Right. Yeah. 100%. 100%. So, and then to echo that here, what I like to do on the show, Susan, is, since the show's been on air for 11 and a half years, and by the way, you are episode number 600. I don't know if that number means something to you, but 600, the show is curated. So we try to just, build on what we haven't already discussed. So I kind of pull things out of your book to kind of add on to that. So I'd love for us to talk about this notion of the landmines of managing difference. So first, what do you mean by landmines? And then let's talk about the 4 that you talk about in your book.
Great. So funny. So the remedy that we came up with all different. So if you think about the differences in perspectives, in generations, in our tolerance with risk, there's even extroversion, introversion. Like there's a myriad of differences that are unseen, never mind the seen and known differences, right? And for anyone human to be able to navigate every single dimension of difference perfectly, I don't think is actually a fair aspiration. I just don't think we can get there, and so we needed a playbook that spelled out what are sort of the tools of people who do this really well. We call it difference intelligence. And so, we have my co-authors, Les Smith and Stuart Kliman, and I did a fair amount of our own research before we came together, and pretty quickly identified 6 target actions that build on one another. And we can talk about that. While we were spelling out and building out and researching and interviewing other people around the 6 target actions, what became clear is we're going to shoot ourselves in the foot in the same ways. The same patterns started to show up. And they really are like explosives, in interpersonal explosives. Like if I do this, you can bet your bottom dollar that the conversation, the project, the team discussion will not go well. And so it was a discussion with Les Smith, who is our country's 66th Inspector General of the United States Army, retired now. He's a 3-star general, and he was in charge of like all explosives. It's some fancy title that I don't remember. But I thought we talked about, well, it's kind of like stepping on a landmine. And so part of all the difference is our author team, because we come from very different places. And I know nothing about landmines. And I said, well, if you know a landmine is there, can you always sort of deactivate it? And he said, yeah, but you got to be on constant recon. I'm like, all right, I'll go with that. Like we can be on landmine recon. So the landmines are, there's 4 of them that we identified that are sort of the big 4. And I'm happy to go into them. What do you think of the analogy though? Because it's kind of, it might be triggering, no pun intended, but I think it works. I mean,
well, I think it is triggering, and I think it's necessary to get people's attention.
So the number 1 landmine is inconsistency. How am I doing? The number 1 landmine is certainty. That's the number 1 landmine. Certainty means you will always agree with your own logic. I mean, my logic makes total sense to me.
Right.
And so when we come into a conversation thinking that we're right and the other person's wrong, or really believing that they're missing something and our conclusion really has it, we can guarantee it will shut down learning. It'll shut down risk-taking. And if you're the leader and you come in with certainty, it shuts down just about everything, including psychological safety and everything else that we want, that creates innovation and problem solving and motion and accountability, all the things that we say we need. So certainty is the number 1 landmine. Second landmine is inconsistency. By this, what our author team talks about is the delta between our intention and our impact, the space between what we say we value and how we actually behave. And, I caught myself just the other day with my daughter. I was in a moment of inconsistency, and she knew it and I knew it. And so to be aware of it is to clean it up. And we'll get to that in a minute. The third landmine is the landmine of emotional reactivity. And I know you've done a ton of work on this. And, it's not just managing your own emotions, noticing and managing. It's also being aware of other people's emotional states and checking in with them, because as you know, the same stimuli could make one person laugh and another person angry and another person, cry, like the same exact occurrence. And so we all have different relationship to different things. And we can't take that for granted if we want to keep team cohesion. And then the last is justification, which is probably my favorite. We're all inclined to rationalize our behavior. Bottom line, right, is to say, because I haven't met a leader, I don't know if you have, that gets up in the morning to make everybody else's day hard. And so when we catch ourselves in having an impact that maybe we didn't intend, we will often justify our behavior for why we did it, whatever that justification is. So certainty, inconsistency, emotional reactivity, and justification are the 4 landmines of managing.
Thank you, Susan. Beautifully done. Beautifully done. And I hope that really helps our listeners and viewers just start to get into the material and the importance of what we're talking about, this whole business of managing difference, and the importance of getting strongly aware of themselves, which is what you situated so beautifully as we started. So let's let them think about that as we take our very first break, marinate a bit in what you've shared so far. I'm your host, Dr. Elise Cortez. We run the air with Susan MacKenty Brady, who is a leadership educator, executive coach, and CEO of the Simmons University Institute for Inclusive Leadership. We've been talking about the importance of the book and how it came together, why we need it. After the break, we're going to continue talking about the concepts from her book, starting with the importance and a way to unlock your best self. We'll be right back.
Dr. Elise Cortez is a management consultant specializing in meaning and purpose, an inspirational speaker and author. She helps companies visioneer for greater purpose among stakeholders and develop purpose-inspired leadership and meaning-infused cultures that elevate fulfillment, performance, and commitment within the workforce. To learn more or to invite Elise to speak to your organization, please visit her at elisecortez.com. Let's talk about how to get your employees working on purpose. This is Working on Purpose with Dr. Elise Cortez. To reach our program today or to open a conversation with Elise, send an email to Elise, A-L-I-S-E, at elisecortez.com. Now, back to Working on Purpose.
Thanks for staying with us and welcome back to Working on Purpose. I'm your host, Dr. Elise Cortez, as I am dedicated to helping create a world where organizations thrive because their people thrive, and they're led by inspirational leaders that help them find and contribute their greatness. And we do business that betters the world. I keep researching and writing my own books. So one of my latest came out. It's called The Great Revitalization: How Activating Meaning and Purpose Can Radically Enliven Your Business. And I wrote it to help leaders understand the lay of the land of today's diverse and discerning workforce. What do they want from you to give their best, stick around, and contribute? And then I offer you 22 best practices to provide that through your culture. You can find my books on Amazon or elisecortez.com. If you are just now joining us, my guest is Susan MacKenty Brady. She's a co-author of All the Difference: 6 Leadership Actions to Bridge Perspectives, Strengthen Teams, and Create Value. So, as you alluded to in the first segment here, Susan, these 6 actions build on themselves. So the first action is to know yourself, unlock your best self, and empower others. And I really liked, and of course aligned, as a lot, there's nothing in your book that I don't really align with. I like how you provide really a 3-part mechanism to do that, if you want to share that and bring that to life.
Well, so first of all, let me just define best self, because, the research we've done at Simmons is actually rooted in best self work, and it's rooted in what we know we need to do to thrive, which is very connected to the work and the research that you've done. So what we found, we have a Thrive Index here, and what we found through our indices is that people only need 3 things in order to have a felt experience of thriving at work. Number 1 is they want to we all want to make a meaningful contribution at work. Number 2 is we want to feel valued for that meaningful contribution. And number 3, we want to learn and grow. And in order to do all 3 of those things, ideally, we come to work as our best selves. And if everybody does that, then we can accomplish those 3 things very, very easily in theory. The way we define best self is where our strengths and talents meet where we are called to add value to others. That is also connected to where we experience vitality. And so I call it the trifecta. So when I am doing something that I feel uniquely good at, I have strengths, capabilities, and other people around me appreciate these strengths and capabilities. And my vector for, vitality is when I lose track of time and when I'm net energized by something. So I just spent an hour like talking about concepts with smart people like you is just fun for me. It's energizing for me, right? So arguably even doing an interview like this might be kind of a good way for me to anchor myself in my best self. So the job of knowing yourself is knowing when you're at your best, and importantly, when you're not. So that also the knowing yourself is to surround yourself with people who have different strengths and talents to bring to the table. So all of this kind of makes up the really understanding who we are. And that also includes what triggers me, where do I have maybe some blind spots, where might I get easily annoyed. It's also the shadow side of what robs me of my best self quickly. So It's our job to know that too in the moment. Yeah.
100%. I love this, Susan. Yes, totally aligned with this. And again, we're all whole world is about trafficking in energy. So the vitality piece is really important. And I love what you said about the net positive energy at the end of the day. If we have that, we're probably in the right lane.
Yes.
Okay, so building on here, and you keep me honest in terms of the way I talk about this, but building on this idea of knowing yourself, the next action is return to respect when it matters most. And I really appreciated, first of all, let me have you talk about that, but then I would love for you to talk about those four
derailers
that we find in the workplace and with ourselves. But so first, why is return to respect when it matters most such a key action?
Yeah, so returning to respect when it matters most, I think is the fulcrum of the model. My co-authors might disagree with me, but there it is, all the difference. And the reason I think it's the fulcrum of the model, because the model builds on itself, the 6 target actions build. So if you think about knowing your best self, knowing when you're not, and understanding what you bring to the table that gives you joy and vitality as the sort of foundation of your difference intelligence home. Okay, that's the foundation. What moves us out of being successful often is we think we aren't as good as others, or we think we are better than others. And those are broad definitions, but whether it be feelings of imposter or, how many times have I told someone that says, I'm very worried I'm not living up to this job. I've never done this job before, that I'm reminding them, why would you know how to do a job you've never done? Right. So, but I think the smarter we are, the more driven, especially I worked with a lot of very, very bright women. Oh my gosh, the critic is alive and well. And so we're constantly, yammering on about what we're deficient in, right? So we have to return to respect for ourselves. And then also, and this is what my first 2 books is really about, is getting a mechanism to return to respect for other people too. Because look, we bump into people who we just don't like, be that personality wise, be that the way they communicate, or maybe we just don't jive with them. We don't connect, we don't something, but we also we run the risk of being really dismissive, especially if we see the world differently. And the more we're advocating our own point of view and not listening for other people's point of view, the more we're, looking down our nose at someone and being critical. People can feel that. People feel contempt. You don't have to say a word. They feel judgment. And that will rob all good acceleration of performance. You can bank on it. People don't want to feel small in someone else's company. They don't want to feel like they're not good enough, and they'll smell it off of you, right? And then their reaction is one of 2 things, right? Typically, is to then feel bigger and better than you back, or to shrink back. And both are losing strategies. So returning to respect matters. And I see 4 ways people really, really get this wrong. These are different than the landmines, but since you mentioned them, I spent a long time sort of observing group work and how folks get derailed, and then also doing with the executive coaching work that I do. And the first way we shoot ourselves in the foot, we work with people who are, I call them the workarounders. These are the people who sit down in the meeting, agree on a path forward, you think you're aligned, and then they go off and do whatever they wanted to do anyway. And it's kind of, the energy is like very dismissive, but they don't talk about it because it's like talk to the hand. Another way we derail progress with respect is, more overt, like the bully behavior. So these are the people who slam their fist down, or who rant and rave, or who will dominate a meeting loudly and aggressively to get their point across. Everyone knows who the bullies are, whether we talk about it or not. The third way, and in no particular order, are the people who quit but stay. So these are the folks who will tell you it is futile. Nothing's going to change around here anyway. So why even bother, And they can become toxic over time, of course, because they basically give up, but they are there to talk about how nothing's going to change. And last but not least are the worried accommodators. And the worried accommodators are those of us who go to work every day to make a difference, to add meaning, to be our best selves. And then we might overdo it in order to prove ourselves. And so the impact on others can be overwhelming. The impact on others actually can create more work. I don't know if you've asked for someone to do something and then overdo the project. And it's like, wow, I have to untangle this now because you took it to a place that it didn't need to go, right? Like, I just wanted this. Now you gave me 5 times that. And so all of these behaviors, which we are all also capable of, not only rob us of our best selves, but they really erode productivity at work and in our teams.
Yes. The last one I really recognize. I have a group of people at a company that I'm coaching, and one of them is definitely, she is that last one that you were talking about. And the great thing is, Susan, through our discussions, she began to recognize it. And she had, stressing herself out and complaining she didn't have 5 hours in a day. And then she realized, oh my gosh, it's me, yeah. Which is amazing, right?
I see this a lot, especially if you're in any way, shape, or form someone who would self-identify as not being in the majority. I see this behavior. Like, we're really just trying to add value. It comes from a place of wanting to add value. Yes. And then we create this over-rowing effect, which creates waves and all sorts of, turbulence. And then we're defensive. It's then you get to the point where I'm just trying so hard here. And it's like, okay.
Yes.
That's part of the problem, right?
Yes.
So,
yes.
It's a trap.
It is a trap. And it's just, once you start to, what's so beautiful about this work that I get to do by hosting this podcast, reading the books in advance, et cetera, is when listeners and viewers start to hear this stuff and they start to recognize, now it brings up into their consciousness and they can do something about it, right? When it becomes conscious. And that's the beauty of so much of this stuff.
Well, it's funny, like you, I want to move into, the frontal cortex of someone's mind to have, you can borrow me a second consciousness for a while, which means, oh gosh, I heard about this best self thing. Susan Brady, I don't think I'm being my best self. And I know I'm not speaking respectfully in my mind to myself. Good. Noticing is job number one. Just noticing.
Right. 100%. Okay, so our third action to build on the other two is to activate honesty, tell the truth, and listen to build trust. Let's talk about what that is and why it's important.
Yeah, so, look, the leader brings the weather. And so
Susan, I love your quips. Well, the leader brings the weather.
The leader brings the weather, right? So if we want people to lean in and give their all, we have to demonstrate what truth looks like, how to build trust, how we can be a leader worth following. And I think that begins with, after, you understand yourself and you're leading from a place of respect, which I didn't say what that is, but it's kind of like how we got going. You bring a lot to the table. You have read books, seen movies, traveled places, had discussions, had accomplishments that I have not. And I have done all that too, that you have not. So I meet you with, I'm enough and I bring something, and you're awesome and you bring something, and we get to now work together effectively to tease out some ideas. This is what I'm talking about. So I'm interested in your work, and I have a podcast, and I work hard on not interviewing the interviewer. So I'm thank you for keeping me on track. But the activating honesty is telling the truth about what's hard, is about saying what's so. We ache for it. We want authenticity. We want leaders who tell the truth, and you can sniff out someone who's not. And so even when I can't express the answer to my team because maybe it's confidential, or even if I don't have the answer and I'm frustrated that I don't have the answer for whatever they're asking, for the direction they need, for whatever, I'll say, I'm really frustrated that I can't answer this in a way that lands for you. I own this and I'm working on it, right? That's activating honesty. I'm using myself at all times as an instrument of learning for my team and the people I work with by saying what's so.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And I liked how you, oh, go ahead, Susan.
No, I was going to say, doing that from a place of standing in respect for self and other is paramount, right? Because if we activate honesty, if we say what's so, and we talk dismissively while we're doing it, like, why would you ask that question? It's going to kill all things good in a conversation or a meeting or energy or, engagement. And then, if we are critical of ourselves while we do it, it's probably going to make the people around us feel uncomfortable. Mm-hmm. So going back to the leader brings the weather, we have to anchor ourselves in a place of taking a breath and a space to show up in a way that is real and doesn't spray our stuff around for other people to contend with, like a weather system.
I have been working with a leader for 10 plus years. She is somebody that she has continued to stoke her own education and development system. This is something she's committed to. It's not amazing, 10 years. Amazing. And she has this thing that this is something she's learned, Susan. She will say when she's about to get into something tender, she'll say, this is me being vulnerable. And as soon as she says that, the person is leaning in on every word and any movement that she makes. And that's when she shares something from the heart that's real and hard and she doesn't have the answer to. And it just melts people.
Yes. And, even the word tender, I mean, it's funny. Some people ask me about language at work and, what's okay to say and what's not okay to say. And I think it's okay to say things like this is making me uncomfortable and I'm going to do it anyway. If you don't like the word vulnerability, but it's a beautiful strategy because it gets people to lower their own guard, Yeah. The leader leads the way. We model.
Yes. It's just been amazing to watch her continue to unfold. Okay, so let's let our listeners and viewers marinate on the things we've been talking about so far, those first three actions. I'm your host, Dr. Elise Cortez. We've been on the air with Susan MacKenty Brady, who is a leadership educator, executive coach, and CEO of the Simmons University Institute for Inclusive Leadership. We've been talking about three of the actions she talks about in the book to bridge perspectives, strengthen teams, and create value. After the break, we're going to cover the last three. We'll be right back.
Dr. Elise Cortez is a management consultant specializing in meaning and purpose, an inspirational speaker and author. She helps companies visioneer for greater purpose among stakeholders and develop purpose-inspired leadership and meaning-infused cultures that elevate fulfillment, performance, and commitment within the workforce. To learn more or to invite Elise to speak to your organization, please visit her at elisecortez.com. Let's talk about how to get your employees working on purpose. This is Working on Purpose with Dr. Elise Cortez. To reach our program today or to open a conversation with Elise, send an email to Elise, A-L-I-S-E, at elisecortez.com. Now, back to Working on Purpose.
Thanks for staying with us and welcome back to Working on Purpose. I'm your host, Dr. Elise Cortez. As you know by now, this program is dedicated to empowering and inspiring you along your journey to realize more of your potential. If you'd like to learn where you are on the Gusto leadership spectrum, go to LinkedIn, find me, Elise Cortez, and scroll to the featured section. There you will find the free assessment called the Gusto Leadership Spectrum. You will learn a lot about yourself and the spectrum of potential awaiting your ongoing development. And be sure to connect with me while you're there if you haven't already. If you are just joining us, my guest is Susan MacKenty Brady. She's the co-author of All the Difference, 6 Leadership Actions to Bridge Perspectives, Strengthen Teams, and Create Value. So continuing on, so we can be sure and get through the last 3 here. The next one is See the Full Story and Honor Multiple Perspectives. This one is just so yummy. And as you said at the beginning of our conversation, Susan, complex times. I mean, this is all of these actions are hard to do, but if you could speak to what this one is and why it's important.
I'm going to just give you a quick analogy. that I offer to all your listeners and to everyone that I coach and work with. And that is, if in every conversation you picture a prism hanging down from the ceiling or even the sky, a pretend prism, and a prism casts light, right? So if I'm on this side of the prism, I might see a yellow hue. You're on the direct opposite side facing me, you might see a green hue. We could argue all day long that the light that is cast from the prism that is above us is yellow. I'll say yellow and you say green, right? If we've got people on the right and the left, they might see orange, they might see red. People argue from the level of conclusion. We know this from lots and lots of research about how people quickly reach conclusion. And the opportunity with seeing multiple perspectives is kind of like literally getting up out of our seat and changing seats to see that the light that's cast from a prism actually is a different color depending upon the view from which you see it. And honoring multiple perspectives is assuming that every situation is more complicated than any one person can see. And any person might be more complicated than any one person can see. And so it's what we don't see, what we don't know, that matters. And I do think my wonderful mentor and friend, Richard Leider, says, the future belongs to the learners, not the knowers. And so we need to be professional learners, all of us humans. While AI gives us more data faster, analyzes, synthesizes, does the hard work on all the information gathering, we need to be professional learners. And to do that requires humility and intellectual humility. I might think I know, what still might I not be seeing? That's the essence of this target action.
I appreciated that you did talk also about humility and also empathy to do that, and being able to really reach across the aisle and try to understand the other person's perspective, experience, desires, frustrations. It's so important, and it is a really big job.
And it's hard, especially if we think we're right, if we're certain, or if we're reactive, if we're having a feeling about something that's uncomfortable. We don't want to. We don't want to seek another perspective. So we have to come back to center, back to respect, and then regroup and proceed.
Mm-hmm. And listeners and viewers, keep in mind that we're still building on these actions, right? Everything that Susan's been talking about, that these are all building actions. And so now we go into number 5, which is ignite togetherness, harness the we. And of course, I love that. Tell us what that is and why it's important.
Yeah, I mean, look, it's one thing for me to get up out of my seat and see a different hue of light and be interested. The leader's job is to help other people do that too. And so, creating togetherness and creating a culture of learning and growth requires us to stay out of the eyes, I think. I used to have somebody who worked for me who spoke in eyes about, a multi-million-dollar business she was running. And I was like, this isn't your business, it's ours. So it's even in language, sharing the responsibility with others, because we can be very exclusive even in how we express our own value, So it's harnessing the we. We're talking about bringing people together to, joint problem solve together, which really requires the first 4 target actions on everybody's behalf. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. If we can, Susan, extend this a little bit here, this whole notion of igniting togetherness. And part of what I also speak about and which is some things that I've learned in this podcast, is the importance of instilling a sense of belonging, that felt sense that I belong here, right? And then, of course, in our world, we're so much about helping people within organizations to align over the purpose of the organization and how their individual role is connected to that, which also brings unity and alignment. So if you could maybe speak a bit to the notion of mattering and how that's connected, or maybe not connected in your view, in terms of igniting togetherness.
Well, I'll give you a real example. So we interviewed 22 phenomenal executives for the book, one of whom is the former leader of Animal Kingdom for Disney, Dwan Rivers. Before he was at Animal Kingdom, he had a assignment to do the hard work with Disney Cruise Lines to try to mend the fences between the classic maritime culture, which Disney partnered with to kick off their cruise line business, and the Disney culture. And, when he came on the ship, it was not going well because there was fundamentally differences of opinions about how to run a ship and and the Disney folks were all about creating the joyful magic and the experience and having fun. And the maritime culture was all about safety and protocols. And, those things are kind of rigid. And Dwan came in, and the first thing he did was he put on the maritime whites. He dressed the part of honoring the maritime folks, who, by the way, Disney was dependent on to make sure they were going to be able to win at the cruise line business. And, I think Dwan would tell you, of course, it took an army of people, but he walked into something that was wrought with mistrust. People were not communicating. There was all sorts of stories about, attribution to the other side, that some of was true, some wasn't. So he needed to model the way which is our sixth target action, with actually starting with bringing people together. And it's really about knitting together the differences in a way that helps people open their hearts and minds to working together effectively. And as we know, it's an unbelievably successful story for Disney. They actually just announced, you probably saw, they're doubling their fleet, and they've invested billions of dollars, and they're expecting it to be a continued growth business for them.
Powerful story, Susan. I mean, that is so powerful. And boy, how many organizations, how many people can bear witness to what it feels like to try to merge organizations and merge those cultures. And that is really hard work to pull off, especially well, and in a way that allows people to thrive, to use your terminology. So thank you for sharing that. That's perfect. Okay, well, let's be sure and hit our last action here. Commit to action, be accountable, and bring it all together. Let's talk about what that is. And before we do that, I want to celebrate your opening quote in that chapter is from Arun Gupta, who is the CEO of Noble Reach, who was a guest on the podcast just a couple of weeks ago. The quote is, "You can't mend a trust. You build it through consistency, follow through, and creating outcomes people can believe in." So if you could talk about this last one, commit to action, be accountable, and bring it all together. What is it, and why is it important?
Yeah, for me, it's the leader models the way. Don't expect other people to do what you are unwilling to do. And so I gotta model the way. And even though this rubric is new, it's meant to be a playbook. I want people to use the language of the book, because it solves also for language we need to create more alignment in the world right now, because we are in polarizing times. And so how do I model the way? The sixth target action is I hold myself accountable and I demonstrate what that looks like for my team. So I'm not asking you to do anything that I'm unwilling to do, from understanding yourself and knowing when you're triggered and knowing when you're not your best self, to returning to respect, to, activating honesty and showing up with some fair amount of vulnerability when the time calls for it, to bringing other people together to, connect and communicate. And we have to model the way. We can't expect other people to do what we're unwilling to do. And it's a vulnerable thing, because we're not going to get it right all the time. That's the thing. So this is really about accountability.
One of the things you're reminding me of, Susan, that I see so often in a lot of the leaders that I end up working with, in our leadership and culture development work, is there's a fair number of leaders that we find ourselves working with who they violate this one terribly. And part of that is, it's this notion of they don't say they don't do what they say they're going to do. They haven't held themselves accountable, and everybody knows that they're not going to do what they said. And it's just an understood thing. And it's so sad. We have to work so hard to get that present to them so they can see, this is what you're doing. I know you don't mean to, but you're forgetting all these things that you say you're going to do. And it means the world to your team.
Why do you think that perpetuates? I have a theory on this, and I also have some research on it, but I bet you do too.
Great question. I think part of it is that they don't have a good system to capture what it is they said they were going to do. I think that's one of it. I think they mean well, they intend to, and it comes out and they want to, but they don't have a system to capture what they said they were going to do for their team members or whoever else.
Yeah.
That's the first major one that comes to my mind.
Yeah.
What do you have?
Yeah. Look, I think the more power you have, be that on the team or in the organization, the less people tell you the truth, and the harder people laugh at your jokes. And so I think there's an insulation that comes with a title that oftentimes is not conducive to getting the feedback that we need as leaders.
Oh, 100%. Boy, we all know this, right, Susan? The further up that you go, the less information you're going to get.
Yeah.
And the less, peer information you're going to get.
Yes.
So yes, and that's just why it's so important to have, spaces where you can get that mirror held back up to you, and you can see what's really so, because you won't get it directly from your team most of the time. Okay, so now I have to ask you this, Susan. This is beautiful. This book that the three of you have created it's powerful, extraordinary, and let's just call it what it is, a crap load of work. What do you hope your readers get from it?
Look, I want people to live, a life of mattering. I think we're meaning seeking as humans right now.
Agreed.
And I think we're connection seeking in the meaning. And in order to do that, we need to build our muscles on how to learn from people who are nothing like us, and also create value from people who are nothing like us, and also learn how to return to a place of respect when people who are nothing like us irritate us. And these are all skills that I think are going to be required in the AI era. And getting better at being human puts you and I in a very important role in the world right now, of a calling that helps a new form of intelligence. We call it difference intelligence, and it's different than emotional intelligence. Emotional intelligence helps leaders understand people. Difference intelligence helps us work together effectively to create value together. And I think that's the call of the day.
Susan, that's so beautiful. Once again, that is a contribution that we haven't had. That's just curated material, difference intelligence. I love that. So now we've come very close to the end of the show already, and I want to give you a chance to close the program as you like. I think you probably know that the show is listened to by people around the world, and they tune in for various reasons, but whether that's to become a better version of the human themselves, to become better leaders, to work on their organization, their culture, what would you like to leave them with?
I want to leave them with something we didn't talk about, which is actually in every chapter, and that is the power of reflection. There is no chance we are going to get better at being human in an AI era if we don't spend some time reflecting on the meeting, reflecting on the conversation, reflecting on a relationship, spending time in reflection. And so we offer reflective questions at the end of every chapter. And I would invite all of your listening audience to even, without our questions, to spend time reflecting and also writing their reflections, because that's how we get better at anything. We look back at it and think, how to go, what worked well, what would be even better if, and how can I do better next time? And it also gives you great material to be real with your team. So that's what I would leave people with.
Susan, so grateful that you stepped into my world and I got to know you through your book and have you on the podcast. Thank you so much for writing the book and for coming on Working on Purpose to talk about it.
Elise, thanks for having me. It's been a joyful conversation for me, and thank you.
For me as well. Thank you. Listeners and viewers, you are going to want to learn more about Susan Brady, the work she does as a leadership educator, executive coach, and the CEO of Simmons University Institute for Inclusive Leadership, and the various books that she has out, including the one we discussed today, All the Difference. Start by visiting her website, leadingallthedifference.com. You can also find her on LinkedIn as well. Last week, if you missed the live show, you can always catch it via recorded podcast or wherever you find them. We were on air with Merad Nazari talking about negotiating from the highest self, where wisdom meets win-win. We talked about his spiritually grounded approach inspired by Eastern wisdom traditions and how you can apply his 8 guiding laws to bring greater awareness, intuition, and creativity into your negotiations and transforming them into opportunities for alignment, trust, and shared success. It was a very chewy, yummy conversation. Next week, we'll be on the air with Ingo Jody Thompson, a future work pioneer, talking about her book, Why Work Sucks and How to Fix It, The Results Only Revolution. I think the name speaks for itself as to what we'll be talking about. So see you then. Let's continue learning how to help more people flourish, elevate your operating system as a leader, and create destination workplaces where legendary business takes place. Let's work on purpose.
We hope you've enjoyed this week's program. Be sure to tune into Working on Purpose, featuring your host, Dr. Elise Cortez, each week on W4CY. Together, we'll create a world where business operates conscientiously, leadership inspires impassioned performance, and employees are fulfilled in work that provides the meaning and purpose they crave. See you there. Let's work on purpose.